I know we have people who listen on YouTube because we upload content there and we have metrics that show people listen to it. I don't understand why that would be one's first choice. Because unless you have YouTube Premium, which now this is like a fucking ad for YouTube Premium, which it's not, like you can't really listen to it in the background on your phone. Maybe if it's like on your computer. I don't know.
Maybe, I don't know. Um, can we take a total tangent for a second?
Of course we
And
can. That's not a
uh
question.
no, no, just talk about the word content and how much I hate it.
Okay, yes, let's hear it.
Um, I hate the term content. I hate the phrase like the like term content creators. I
Mhm.
hate that like that is how we refer to creatives in this day and age who make audio or visual media of any kind. It is so generic. Like I am not a content creator. I'm a
Me either.
podcaster.
Mhm.
Um, also, like I am not creating content, quote unquote, as I make little finger quotes. I'm making a podcast with my bestie, which is a lovely conversation, which is exactly, the same thing we'd be doing if we hadn't recorded this. But like, TikTokers aren't making content. They're filming short form videos, for various purposes. Some of them are comedians, some of them are uh, you know, like short form journalists. Like some of them are like, modern day fashion bloggers, right? That like fashion vloggers.
Let me provide an alternate take because I also have no desire to identify as a content creator and I don't view what we do here as content. But if we take more of a capitalist hellscape view on this whole thing. So, content, I think when I think about the phrase content, it's specifically on social media. So, specifically Instagram and TikTok. I'm sure there's other platforms people make content for. I don't care about those. I try not to be on too much social media. I don't think there's such a thing as Twitter content, but it is because like those social media platforms are inherently they don't have any inherent substance. They need you to produce things to fill them. You are producing what they contain. That is the content. That's like
Yes.
that
We are
old
the product.
exactly. It's like if you're not paying for something, you are the product, that kind of thing. So it's that. So TikTok does not inherently offer us anything. You have to fill it and then somehow feel like you're also getting a reward. It's like a whole thing. It fucks with your brain. So I think in that sense, they are making content because the platforms need their content to survive, And it is unfortunate that it diminishes the value of the work that they do because people do really interesting and cool and funny and innovative stuff. But I think calling it content is appropriate for like existentially what the platform means. But this also
Sure, but like calling it like that for, you know, the purposes of like, you know, as a job, what do you do? I'm a content creator. That doesn't tell me shit. Also, like
yeah.
you said, like Twitter doesn't have content, right? So, you know, like a blogger, are they
Mhm.
making content? Is somebody who writes, like fics for public consumption, is somebody who makes web comics, like are they making content? Cuz no, I feel like content carries with it now the connotation of being like auditory or visual or both.
Mhm.
And so, you know, like again, I feel like it just it diminishes the work itself. Um and it, like you said, like you are making the things for these platforms to then make money off of.
Mhm.
And for many to use the term content creators, they, they're making a living off of it too. But I think like I don't want to give in to that capitalist hellscape nightmare and say like, oh, like, all it is just content. It deserves so much more than that. It feels like the way that Murderbot talks about media, stores of media. Like, on the entertainment feeds, where just the generic, the
The
I don't know, that's
interchangeable.
yeah, when it's not, right?
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, nowadays I feel like I can't be left alone with my own thoughts. I know there's plenty of other people out there in the world who can't be left alone with their thoughts, and we're constantly
That's why you're
consuming.
here listening to a podcast.
Exactly. We're out here consuming this content, which I also think is kind of a hellishly capitalist view of the
Mhm.
creative works that are produced by artists of all kinds. You know. Anyway, that's I vehemently vehemently ve, whatever.
Vehemently.
Thank you. Vehemently dislike the term content and content creator, and uh will apply it to somebody if they apply it to themselves, but do not like it. It
That's fair.
is
And
it is bad. It is late stage capitalism.
we're both actively avoiding becoming content creators. It is not inevitable to become a content creator. We're not going to. Like, we just want to have our nice conversations about Lord of the Rings and have this be, a record for our future memories and invite other people into the discussion. And that is satisfying. And now we're really going on tangents about art. And I had a whole conversation with my spouse about art and whether or not Taylor Swift is a poet, because this is coming hot off the heels of Tortured Poets Department, which I know now we are, again, several months late to the zeitgeist. They believe Taylor Swift is not a poet. I believe she's just a bad poet. And you can't say someone isn't an artist if you think their art is bad. Like, that doesn't mean they're not an artist. It just means that they're bad. So, Taylor Swift hot takes for a later time. Um,
We're
but
going to alienate our Swifty listeners, Sam.
no, listen, it's fine. It's fine to like Taylor Swift. Love is love. Anyone can like Taylor Swift. Swifties, normal people. Love is love. I forget what, damn, I had this whole thing I was going to say about art, and then I just forgot. What were we talking about?
Bad art is still art.
Maybe. It'll come back to me in a minute, or it won't. It doesn't matter.
The it's the art equivalent of null results are still results,
Mhm.
which is the most science nerd thing I could possibly say right here. Um,
I love that, and I love you.
Speaking of science, I don't have a segue there. So, for science, I guess, no.
In the interest of continuing our non capitalist, friendship based enjoyment of life, sometimes you don't have to grind aggressively. You can just make something because you love it and then have that be enough.
Sometimes the aggressive grinding can be the fun, though.
I mean, depends if Aragorn is involved.
Listen, I'll take Faramir. Faramir's the hottest goddamn person in these stories. And I will take constructive criticism on that point. Let's go.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Fandom Apprentice. I'm one of your hosts, Ryn. I have read Lord of the Rings before, and it was a big part of my childhood, and so I am here sharing it with my bestie.
I'm Sam. I'm the other one. Through context clues, you can figure out that I have not read this series before, although now we're a pretty decent way through. So I feel like I've got some experience under my belt. I'm not totally ignorant of this world at this point.
Yeah. Um, but it doesn't stop finding ways to surprise us, like giving us new hot men to talk about.
I love talking about hot men.
It's how you know we're bisexual.
I don't know if we really got that much of a physical description of oh, wait, okay, so let's say what kind of vowel sound? Is it Faramir? Is it Faramir? How are we saying this man's name? I'm still gonna say it both ways, but, like, what's the correct way?
Faramir.
Faramir.
Yes.
Okay. I will try to say it correctly. No promises.
I wish you all the best, Hestaflock. Um, so today we are talking about The Window on the West and God, what's our next chapter? The other one.
The Forbidden Pool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, where we last left our intrepid heroes, it's been a minute for us. It's been like 3 weeks. Been like
Yeah, we were gonna
no, it's
record
been
last
longer.
week, and then stuff happened, and then we didn't, and I took all my notes last week, so I also was skimming them, trying to remember what happens in these chapters, so we will just be in a bit of a silly mood, and that's fine.
It's yeah, I am realizing I don't think we've recorded since before I went to Canada.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think
So
you're
it's
right.
been like a hot minute. Anyway,
But
I'm
anyway,
back in the States now.
welcome back, and I'm sorry that you have to be back here.
Here we are. So, Sam wakes up. Where we last left our heroes, they had like witnessed a great battle between Faramir's men and a bunch of Southrun men from Harad, including Mumak and Oliphant, who was
Oh,
run off into the
yeah, the
distance.
Oliphant!
And, as this battle's going on, the hobbits take a nap.
Because what the fuck else are they gonna do? It's giving Bilbo getting knocked out during the Battle of the Five Armies. There's a big battle,
Fair.
and the hobbits are just not participating.
This is true. So Sam wakes up to find 200 to 300 warriors around him, with Faramir having come back. And one
Mhm.
of the immediate lines that shot out at me was Sam crept out from the fern, but no one paid any attention to him.
Yeah, I
And
noticed
that
that
is Sam's
too.
life in a nutshell. Like, he's a servant and everyone knows it, so everyone can just ignore him. And I feel so bad about it.
Yeah, I wrote, yeah, Sam wakes up and sees Faramir and his men and Frodo, and of course no one notices him again. It's just it is the way of things for poor Sam. Which, I
Yeah.
mean, at least he has a good attitude about it and can use it to his advantage, but yeah. Also, like, it seems like bad security. I mean, I know that he's just a lowly servant and who cares, but he's also one of these two random strangers that you found wandering in this super dangerous place with kind of unknown to you intentions. Shouldn't you not underestimate them? And I know big people underestimating hobbits is a whole thing, but still, it just seems foolish to have no one keeping an eye on Sam.
Yeah, I feel like one of the tropes that comes up a lot is like, oh, the butler did it, or oh, it's this lowly servant that no one noticed that was the spy. Yeah, because everyone just fucking ignored them.
Mhm.
No one thought that the servants could read.
Yeah. So yeah, Sam sneaks away and sees Faramir talking to Frodo. Um, and I think I'm already saying it wrong. Tell me again how I say it. Faramir, Faramir,
Faramir.
Faramir. Okay, I was saying it right. Um, yeah, Frodo's being cagey about the ring, and Faramir is unimpressed with his explanation. And basically, Faramir is asking for literally any proof that Frodo is who he says he is and is doing what he says he's doing. Because Faramir doesn't know who Aragorn is and doesn't care that he can vouch for them. And it's just nobody's getting any of the answers that they want in this conversation.
Well, and Frodo, shouted out Boromir at one point.
Mhm.
And so Faramir's trying to like dig for more information on Boromir and wondering like why was Boromir not in charge? Because he was a prince. Like, and Frodo's like, well, it's because Aragorn is a king.
Mhm.
And Faramir sort of gives the like standard, like, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
Um, quote, And Frodo's like, "Listen, dude, Boromir can answer your questions. I'm sorry. I can't talk to you about this. You don't know me and I don't know you."
Yeah, we haven't really touched on magic makes you dramatic in a while, but Frodo's being obnoxious. He's saying, Boromir was satisfied if that claim, said Frodo. Indeed, if Boromir were here, he would answer all your questions. And since he is already at Rhoros many days back and intended to go straight to your city, if you return, you may soon learn the answers there. My part in the company was known to him. And then he just like keeps going, but is just like, listen, Boromir thought it was fine. So if you think you're better than Boromir, then you have some explaining to do. But it's just like so sassy.
Well, Frodo also finally fucking learned good OPSEC.
What?
Um, OPSEC, operational security.
Ah.
As opposed to like, slipping on the ring as he's drunk and singing in an inn. Um, and giving everyone's full government names to the night watchman. Like,
Mm,
he has finally fucking learned that you don't just tell people shit.
yeah.
Um, and so, I don't necessarily know that this is him being dramatic. This is just him practicing decent OPSEC.
But it is still funny. He's still talking about
It
how
is
he
still
was appointed by
funny.
the council. On that errand, I came to this country, but it is not mine to reveal to any outside the company. Yet those who claim to oppose the enemy would do well not to hinder it. Just like, what? Like accusing him of supporting the enemy?
Also,
That's a
I want to
bit
note,
much. Yeah.
yeah, I want to note here, Frodo refers to Rivendell as Imladris. We know that Rivendell was referred to as Imladris in the like prophecy vision that Faramir
Mhm.
received.
Yeah.
Um, and that Boromir followed up to Rivendell. Imladris is the Sindarin word for Rivendell because the
Mhm.
men of Gondor speak Sindarin.
Mhm.
And we're just going to leave that there, and I'll touch on it again in a few minutes.
Okay.
um, anyway, like Faramir asks, Frodo if he was Boromir's friend, and Frodo hesitates a minute and goes, "I mean, like, yeah, sure, I guess."
Mhm.
And Faramir's like, "So you'd be upset to learn he's dead?" And Frodo's like, "Bitch, you're lying.
Yeah, is this a prank? What's happening?
Where's the hidden cameras?"
Yeah. Also, what's a
And Frodo's
camera?
well, and Faramir's literally like, "I wouldn't even lie to an orc,"
Mhm.
which makes Faramir better than cops because cops can lie to you.
This is true.
To be fair, orcs are better than cops.
Yeah. Basically, anyone is better than cops.
Sauron's better than cops. Um,
Mm, that I
I don't know,
might
actually.
this might be like a greater than or equal to situation. I don't know. Anyway.
But Frodo's like, he was alive when I left him 11 days ago, but it's dangerous out there. And Faramir just goes like, yeah, treachery's a real danger. And Sam gets up and goes like, that's it, motherfucker. um,
Yeah, Sam gets spicy, and I have a quote. See here, Captain. He planted himself squarely in front of Faramir, his hands on his hips, and a look on his face as if he were addressing a young hobbit who had offered him what he called sauce when questioned about visits to the orchard. So he's just telling him off like a child. And basically telling Faramir to get to his fucking point, and that if he's accusing Frodo of murdering Boromir, to at least admit that that's what he's doing, and then say, well, what do you plan to do about it? You're going to arrest us? You're going to kill us? Like, make a decision, buddy. And then he goes on to say a similar line of reasoning to what Frodo said, that if Sauron knew that Faramir was hindering them from their task, he would be thrilled because it's preventing them from completing their mission. And then basically Faramir tells Sam to shut up and sit down, and that Frodo's smarter than him.
yeah, he's like, you're fucking hasty. We're engaging in a delicate word dance over here. And honestly, I agree with Sam. Say what the fuck you mean, say it plainly. Like, I get you're trying to be sure that you're on the same side, but we could have gotten there so much earlier. Like, if you
Mhm.
intend to kill them if they're not on your side, like, at least stop dancing around that shit, right?
Yeah, I respect that.
Anyway, Right now they're, whole like sign countersign spy versus spy fucking bullshit right now, and it's not helping anything or anyone. They're just getting more
Yeah.
and more suspicious of each other as time goes on. But anyway, Faramir knows Boromir's dead because Boromir was his brother.
Mhm.
And he asks Frodo if there was anything special that Boromir carried with him. And Frodo goes, well, yeah, he had a horn. And that's how Faramir knows that, like, he actually knew Boromir.
Yeah, and he tells Frodo about his vision that he has of Boromir in the boat and asking Frodo about where his horn went, and things kind of ease up between them as they confirm each other's stories. And Frodo says, well, it sounds like he was in one of the elven boats that we got. And Faramir tells Frodo about Boromir's horn and that it broke and its pieces have washed up on the shore.
Yeah. I do want to point out, too, like, Frodo's, telling Faramir of the cloak and belt that Galadriel gave them,
Hmm.
because it's not a vision specifically.
Hmm.
It's like Faramir sees his brother's body in the boat, like, genuinely in person.
Oh, like he literally saw it.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I interpret it as like a vision, but as we know, I'm not the best at visualizing geographically where everyone is in these stories. So I didn't know if
Well,
he would have floated past where Faramir would be.
right. It's because, and there's actually a brief conversation about that where Frodo is like, maybe it's an illusion conjured by the enemy, because no boat could come down the falls of Rhoros unscathed, right?
Hmm.
They're well below the falls at this point. And back in that first chapter of the book where they sent Boromir's body down the river, it mentions like that they were planning to have it dashed on the rocks below, but that
Hmm.
eventually it floated, it is said that it floated all the way out to sea.
Hmm.
Because Faramir, you know, in questioning Frodo, like learns that the boats come from Lorien, and he says nothing passes through there unchanged.
Hmm.
And he expressly says the word unchanged. And so here's the little parallel that Tolkien's drawing, right? Boromir, when they were entering Lorien for the first time in Fellowship, right? Boromir said that people don't pass through unscathed,
Hmm.
right? And Aragorn tells him, don't say unscathed, say unchanged.
Yeah.
And so now we're drawing a parallel between Aragorn and Faramir as sort of the wiser of the two.
Hmm.
Um, unchanged doesn't have as negative a connotation as unscathed. Unscathed suggests that, like, there is harm being directed at you,
Yeah.
whereas change is a constant.
Yeah. Unscathed, you have already made a judgment. Are you're assuming that you will be harmed instead of assessing and responding to the situation. You have already decided how you think the situation's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Um, well, and as they're discussing the ship burial of Boromir, right? Frodo, like, once he sort of ascertains that, like, oh shit, this actually was Boromir, he immediately gets really anxious that the rest of the company is also dead and that he and Sam are the only ones left. And Faramir
Yes.
is like, someone had to bury Boromir,
Yeah, he basically tells him
right?
to slow his roll, that, he didn't arrange himself in the boat.
Yeah, it's funerals are for the living. Like, the dead don't bury themselves, except in the case of like some self-mummifying monks and people who prepare their tombs, like pharaohs and such.
Mhm.
Um, Point is, we discussed this a little bit when we were discussing how the company prepares Boromir for death.
Mhm.
But we learn a lot about a culture by how they treat their dead. What, right? Like, what the culture considers important to display with their dead,
Mhm.
how they display their dead, how they treat their dead. That tells us, you know, more about a culture at large than it does about any one individual person.
Yeah.
Anyway,
This is a slight
um,
tangent, but I saw a video earlier about just contemporary burial practices in the Western world. And somebody was talking about how some caskets, I don't remember what country it was, but they commonly will have like a glass panel like over the body, whereas like in the US that's not so common. I think it was an American person saying like, "Hey, look at these like glass windows. Why don't we have that?" And then a mortician or casket salesperson was explaining like, well, in America we really like to touch our dead. We like to hold their hands and kiss their faces, and also embalming is really common here, so it's a little bit easier logistically to have an open casket at a funeral, whereas in other parts of the world where embalming is less common or people are less inclined to touch their dead, it might make more sense to cover them up. But like, yeah, it just speaks to broader cultural trends that people might not even be consciously aware of. They're just like, this is what we do with dead bodies, so we're going to do it.
mhm.
Anyway.
It's kind of fascinating that Faramir here is the one sort of, comforting Frodo about his own brother's death.
Mhm.
Um, Also, though, it also tracks because Faramir's a warrior,
Yeah.
right? He has dealt with death. He has dealt death to people. Whereas Frodo is not a warrior. He is on this quest because he has to be,
Mhm.
right? Not because it would have been his choice. Um, but anyway, like you said, Faramir found the Horn of Gondor cloven in two on the banks of the river.
Mm.
Um,
Which that just seems
and
like foreshadowing that they're going to fix it and like blow it at some important moment. Can that be a capital P prediction?
that can be a capital B prediction. Let's do it.
Because that just seems like, I don't think they would have pointed that out if it wasn't going to come back. That seems like an awful lot of attention to pay to one specific detail. Like, oh, this super important Horn of Gondor, this important cultural artifact. We're just not going to fix it. Yeah, they're totally going to fix it.
We'll count that as a prediction for you, and we'll see what happens. Um, so Faramir now has he's they've done the elaborate word dance. He has ascertained that they are telling the truth. He knew a whole, bunch of information, and he's now filled in the gaps to his knowledge, um, to his satisfaction, and
Mhm.
he feels like he can now take them back to his hiding place, um, where they will wait before he decides whether or not he's going to take them to Minas Tirith to answer to his father Denethor.
Mhm.
And as they walk, he goes, "So, I called it back there. I, hush the fuck up a little bit because we probably shouldn't talk about everything in front of people. But now, that we're on our own, we really should talk about Isildur's Bane,
Yeah.
because he doesn't know what it is."
Mhm.
So, Faramir describes his family line. He gives a Tolkien lore dump.
Yes.
Talks about they're not heirs of Elendil, but they're the stewards of Gondor who ruled when the king was away at war. You know, Boromir, as a kid, wanted their family to be kings of Gondor.
Mhm. And I
Was
have the quote
upset.
about that.
Yes, please.
So I think that this question Boromir asks is a very good question. So this is what Faramir says. And this I remember of Boromir as a boy, when we together learned the tale of our sires and the history of our city, that it always displeased him that his father was not king. How many hundreds of years need it to make a steward a king if the king returns not? He asked. Few years, maybe, in other places of less royalty, my father answered. In Gondor, 10,000 years would not suffice. Alas, poor Boromir, does that not tell you something of him? Which, that loving chiding at the end, chef's kiss, brotherly love, we love it. But, so two things. A, obviously Aragorn is the returning king. We've confirmed this. Yeah, duh. B, what makes a monarchy legitimate, bestie? Can we talk about this? I don't have an answer. I think if
Oh.
we had answers about
Oh.
this, there would be less wars and different systems of government. But you know what, little Boromir? That's a really good question. At what point do we just stop answering to random dead people and let this random fucker with a claim to a bloodline show up and rule our country, as opposed to the people who have been actually ruling our country for a super long time? Or like in the reverse, if a country is occupied and like unjustly taken over, like everyone in the entire world by like, you know, European and American empires and stuff, do they ever lose their claim to govern themselves because they've been occupied for so long? What does it all mean? I think little Boromir was asking good questions.
I mean, obviously. The only one that we can write off the table for like establishing a system of government and divine right of kings is strange women lying in ponds distributing swords.
Mhm.
That's no basis for a system of government.
Everyone knows this.
Um, Obviously, that's just a direct path to seeing the violence inherent in the system.
Is that
Um,
better or worse than the Electoral College, though? Just
Honestly, that's
saying, it's an
strange.
election year.
That's strange men lying in ponds distributing swords, essentially.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, divine right of kings, like, mandate of heaven type bullshit.
Mhm.
I mean, by and large, historically, what has led a royal family to rule is military power.
Mhm.
You know, what makes a monarchy legitimate? The massive fucking army at their back,
Yeah.
the guns and the swords and the armor, the chariots and horses.
I remember when I was in, I think like the ninth or 10th grade, I was doing a couple of online classes in addition to my like regular schoolwork. And this was
Mhm.
back before remote learning children. Hopefully there's no children listening to this podcast, but I don't know, maybe you were in college during the pandemic or you're listening far in the future.
Unfortunately, I have to tell you, it's been 4 years since the start of the pandemic, which means people who were children at the start of the pandemic are now adults.
Ugh, horrible. Anyway, this was before remote learning was like a real thing where people actually learned anything. So I did VHS or virtual high school. It was a fucking joke. It was like you would read like a paragraph and post 2 discussion posts a week, and that was the class. And so I just spent the entire rest of that class period because I still had like a full assigned class period during the school day to do it. It's just like an elective thing. So I just sat in the library and went on tumblr.com and then spent 20 minutes a week actually doing schoolwork. It was great. But one of those classes I took was some kind of government class. I don't remember what I learned because I didn't learn anything, but one of the assignments that I had to do was I had to talk to someone who was like an expert and ask them a bunch of questions about government stuff. And the only expert I knew was my history teacher. So I asked him a bunch of questions. And the one question that I remember asking him, and the one answer that I remember he gave me was, what makes a government legitimate? And his answer was the consent of the governed. And I have always agreed with that. But that's a much more peaceful interpretation than the historical reality that it's usually just about whoever has the most swords.
Yeah, well, and that's the interesting thing is, yes, the consent of the governed in theory is what makes a government legitimate. But, even these days in modern democracies, does it?
We're making faces, but this is an audio medium, so those don't really translate. The faces are of humorous skepticism.
That's a really kind way of putting it, bestie.
I try to put things kind ways. I try to be kind. Someone has to.
You are very kind. You are very kind. Um, so I guess this is a good time as, I'm not actually sure. I have a schedule somewhere of when all these episodes come out. But as we draw closer and closer in the US to our federal election, I will say it is the official policy of the Phantom Apprentice that you should vote.
Yes, yes, you should not.
Um,
we're as disillusioned with the system as anybody, man, but you need to fucking vote. You need to vote,
I'm not gonna
please.
tell you who to vote for. I I
Yeah.
won't do that. I will say if you happen to be voting for the Tangerine Hellbeast, if you've made it this far in the podcast, fuck man, I don't know what you're doing. Um, but I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, but I will tell you you need to vote.
Mhm.
Um, if you don't have a presidential candidate you like, if you don't feel like you have a presidential candidate you can vote for, vote in your down ballot elections. I know, at this point, most, if not all, of the primaries have gone by. So you're kind of stuck with like who won the primaries. Vote in your down ballot elections, particularly if you've got anything local going on, because that's going to make all the fucking difference um, at the local level. Um, the federal government is a fucking nightmare. No matter who's in charge, it'll be worse if there's certain people in charge. But at least for like domestic policy and local policy, your down ballot elections, particularly your state and local politics, is what's going to um, matter to you. Particularly if you live in a heavily gerrymandered state, um, in the United States, where your state legislature is heavily skewed towards the Republican Party just by nature of how your voting districts are, then your local elections are going to be even more important. If you can get somebody on fucking school committee who doesn't think that all trans students should be murdered, um, then the trans students in your district get to fucking survive until they,
Mhm.
graduate high school and can theoretically get out of town if they want to do that or stay and make change of their own, right? Getting someone voted into the zoning board who believes that like housing is a human right or at least should be more affordable is going to make a huge change in your local day-to-day life, right?
Mhm.
So it is the official policy of the Phantom Apprentice that you should vote.
Vote by mail, vote early. There's ways to access voting, even though, there's many forces that try to suppress it. And as we've mentioned frequently, we record these so far in advance. It's April right now. There will be horrors beyond our comprehension that happen between now and when this episode comes out and when the election happens. We cannot even predict. But despite whatever bullshit will happen, still vote. And especially with the local shit, um you know when you're operating at that small of a level, no matter how big or small your community is, those are going to be people in your community. You might run into them at the grocery store, you might know somebody who knows somebody. Your ability to directly influence the shit that people on your school board, zoning committee, city council, whatever, the stuff that they do, like a handful of personalized emails will throw off an entire city council meeting. There's so
Standing in
much.
front of their home with a goddamn sign. Now that's a little extreme, and depending on how you do it, can get you arrested.
Yeah, don't
So just
don't get arrested.
be careful. Be careful. um, but you know, we know where these people live. They have addresses.
And like and I know this is like a huge tangent, but I don't want to cut it because I love it. Um that's what being in a community is. That's, I know you, you know me. I know where you live, you know where I live. We are all accountable to one another. That's theoretically, in like a perfect beautiful world, that's how government is supposed to work. And I've just been really prioritizing involving myself in the super micro level of my community this year. I am at my local library 4 days a week, largely because my job allows me to do that. But I'm involved in my community on like such a minute level. And I fucking love it because now I know everybody who knows everybody. I know the teachers, I know the library workers, I know the fucking waste management people. I know everybody, and it's awesome and it's really cool, and I feel less hopeless about the world because there are actual human relationships that can influence people's choices.
You're not
Anyway.
gonna yeah, you're not gonna agree with everyone in your community, and that's just the nature of existing. Um,
Mhm.
as various coalition organizers in the past have said, if you agree with everyone in your coalition's not big enough.
Mhm.
So like for example, I saw that specifically referenced in regards to the WGA writers' strike last year,
Mhm.
and I think it was the president of the WGA who was a fucking wild ass anti-vaxxer.
I think it's Fran Fine. I think she played the nanny on hit TV
Yeah,
series The
something
Nanny.
like that. Fucking wild ass anti-vaxxer.
Mhm.
However, fighting for labor rights. I, fight her tooth and nail on the fucking vaccine stuff, but like you're on the same side on that issue. So, in your communities, at your union meetings, at your, school board meetings, find an issue, gather a coalition, and fucking hammer that issue into the ground, right?
Mhm.
You can no permanent allies, no permanent enemies is another like big phrase of organizing.
Yeah.
Um, that no permanent allies is really good as we move into election season, right?
Mhm.
There is no perfect politician. And that goes for, all the way from fucking genocide Joe in the White House to all the way down to Wendy on the school board. Not a single one of these people is going to agree with you down the ballot. And so, finding what they will agree with you on or what they might be able to be pushed on and then fucking pushing those buttons, that's going to get you pretty far.
Hell yeah.
Anyway,
Speaking of allies and enemies, bringing it back
allies and
to
enemies.
uh Lord of the Rings. So
Yes, we're
our
talking about
other
Faramir.
yes. Um so I think we have thoroughly explored what makes a monarchy legitimate. But they also talk about Gandalf a little bit, who Faramir knew him as yeah, bestie.
I was just going to
You want
say
to finish my
about,
sentence?
well, sure, I will absolutely finish your sentence. Um, he mentions the Grey Pilgrim
Mm,
specifically.
mhm.
Mithrandir. Again, his Elvish, his Sindarin name,
There
because
we
they
go.
speak Sindarin.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not done with that point yet.
Oh,
Uh,
I know. I know.
cool. Um, and he mentions a bunch of other names of Gandalf. He's Mithrandir, he's Tharkun, he's Oloran, he's Incanus, he's Gandalf, he's Yolfir, he's Hovi, he's Rodan and Gangleri and Fjolnir and Odin. The everything past Gandalf is a name of Odin. Um,
Sounds about right.
yeah, because they're the same fucking character. Anyway, Frodo, upon hearing all of this, goes, "Oh, him, right? He's dead."
You tell me that this person is dead. I tell you that this person is dead.
Right. This is where we get sort of our mid-book review because, like, we haven't seen Frodo and Sam for a hot minute, right? And we've learned a
Mhm.
whole lot, and also Gandalf's back in the other timeline. So now we're sort of being reoriented to like what Frodo and Sam know.
Yes.
Anyway, so this is where they then start to talk about Isildur's Bane.
Yes, and Faramir is really smart. He my respect for him is just growing and growing throughout this chapter because he is putting things together so accurately and he's just so shrewd in the information he's able to get out of them. So, he's putting the pieces together in his mind. Gandalf, when he came and visited his people, always wanted to hear stories about Isildur, and Faramir never really knew what Isildur's bane was. He knew that Isildur had taken something from Sauron in their battle, but it hadn't occurred to him until now that the thing that Isildur took and his bane could be the same thing. Because he was like, well, Isildur was slain by an orc arrow, and there's a million fucking orc arrows, so that doesn't seem like anything. And then he's going, okay, well, if it's the same thing, and if it's something that grants advantage in battle, then Boromir definitely would have wanted it, and that would make sense why Frodo's being cagey about it, and probably
Mhm.
why you fought about it. Like, this all makes sense. Okay. And then proving that he is the smartest one, has the most correct opinion, saying, I don't want to know what this fucking thing is. You don't have to tell me. And I wouldn't take it from you even if it was laying by the side of the highway. I know better than to involve myself with this thing. Smartest boy award.
Full on, not where Minas Tirith falling in ruin and I alone could save her, so, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory. No, I do not wish for such triumphs, Frodo, son of Drogo.
A plus. Good job.
So fear me not. I do not ask you to tell me more. I do not even ask you to tell me whether I now speak nearer the mark. But if you will trust me, it may be that I can advise you in your present quest, whatever that be. Yes, even aid you. And as this is
Mhm.
going on, Sam is thinking, we haven't talked about Gollum in a while, but I fucking hate that asshole, so I'm not gonna say shit.
It has been however many minutes since Sam has talked about how much he hates Gollum.
Reset the counter. Um Anyway, Faramir finally blindfolds them for the last part of the journey, and Faramir can blindfold me whenever he likes.
I'll make sure to let him know.
Um, Listen, this is a man that will pick up on everything.
Yeah.
Um, this is an educated man.
There's now this is the part where I always encounter these moments where I'm like, is this too horny for the podcast? It
Uh,
seems like you could have some really productive conversations with him before, during, after. He would be a very attentive lover. He would be paying attention to you. He would pick up on shit. Yeah, no. He can get it. Rin just gave me an eyebrow
anyway,
waggle.
Faramir leads them to the window of the sunset, Haneth Anun, fairest of all the falls of Ithilien, a well hidden and well guarded place. Ithilien, by the way, is this region that they're in. It's the part of Gondor that borders Mordor on the eastern side of the river.
Okay.
So that's where they are right now, is in Ithilien.
Mhm.
Anyway, the hobbits are given somewhere to rest until someone mentions a creature that looked like a tailless black squirrel, maybe from Mirkwood, because they have big squirrels there, right? Um,
They're known for their famous squirrels.
it's obviously Gollum, of course. Um, And here I have in my notes, because in my notes, none of the tangents that we've had were in there. We haven't had a tangent yet. I don't know. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking because this is the tangent podcast, but I would like to have a short tangent about squirrels.
Of course, please do.
Um, so squirrels. First of all, squirrel is one of those words that when you look at it too many times, or say it too many times, or type it too many times, it stops looking like a real world, a real word.
Listen, I am a person who, the majority of the texts that I send, even the ones that I send to you, I will repeat them in my head a good 4 or 5 times before I type them out, just to like make sure that it's right. And very often, by the time I've gotten through that internal repeating process, it will have lost all meaning. And then I'll be like, I really hope should is a word because I just sent it.
So squirrel is definitely not a real word, and as I typed this observation into my notes, then typed, anyway, squirrel, 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 and then continued my tangent. Um,
That's fair.
so, you know, thinking about squirrels, and This creature being approximately tailless giant fucking squirrel sized.
Mhm.
I would like to know what fucking rodents of unusual size they have in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Squirrels are rodents. They're of the family Sciuridae. Um, and they likely evolved in the Americas as a family. The family contains tree squirrels and flying squirrels that we're familiar with, as well as ground squirrels, chipmunks, prairie dogs, and marmots are interestingly also in that family, which I did not think about. Um, Marmots are the heaviest members of the squirrel family at about like 8 kilos, up to eight
I need to
kilograms.
look at a picture of a marmot while you're talking.
um,
Oh, it's like a groundhog.
yeah, exactly. Um, in the eastern US, we are most familiar with the eastern gray squirrel, right?
Mhm.
Um, European listeners will also be familiar with this because it's an invasive over there. Um, but you will also be familiar with the red squirrel, which is only slightly smaller. The eastern gray squirrel is widespread across North America, so most of our listeners should probably be fairly familiar with it. The largest squirrels of the things that like we would truly recognize as squirrels, other than like, the 8 kilogram marmots, but
Mhm.
the Malayan black giant squirrel and the Indian or Malabar giant squirrel, Ratufa bicolor and Ratufa indica, respectively. They're some of the largest species. They're about the size of a cat.
Oh, they're
Um,
cute.
They're about 1 to 2 feet long from head to butt with a long tail
Mhm.
that's about the same length. And so total length is like 2 to 3 feet long from nose to tail tip, or for our European listeners and our Canadian listeners, about 50 to 100 centimeters, which is roughly 3 times the size of an eastern gray squirrel.
Mhm.
Um, the Bhutan flying squirrel has been recorded with a total nose to tail length of 4 foot 2 inches, or 127 centimeters. Um, Gollum is about hobbit sized.
Mhm.
And, we don't really have a size for hobbits, but they're the size of a large child. So, like, a little above waist height, probably, bottom of your ribs. So, all this to say, if Gollum is sized the same as a big squirrel, they've got some truly fucking rodents of unusual size out there in Middle Earth.
Clearly.
I did the fucking research.
And I respect that. Thank you.
Some rodents of unusual size and some tiny fucking crocodiles, because they've described him as like a crocodile before too.
Maybe they just don't know very much about animals.
Maybe they have caimans and giant fucking squirrels, because some caimans are pretty small.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's all happening. Sam gets to be waited on a little bit. Some of the men bring him food and water and stuff, which is sweet. I appreciated that. Um, both of the hobbits are feeling much happier after a big meal, as I also would be. And they
Sam
go
also
and
dunks his head in a bucket of water.
and I think he's just one of the random soldiers asking, is this the custom among your people to wash the head before meals?
And before supper,
Oh,
specifically, and
before
Sam goes,
supper.
no. And Sam goes, no, before breakfast. But if you're short of sleep, cold water on the neck's like rain on a wilted lettuce.
Beautiful. I love Sam.
I love him so much.
Yeah.
I
So
also
then,
love the other little cultural bit we get.
yeah,
Were you about to talk about it?
I don't think so. No, I was going to talk about something very silly.
Oh, it was just before they ate, Faramir and all his men turned and faced west in a moment of silence. Faramir signed to Frodo and Sam that they should do likewise. Um, I love this little like grace-like custom uh that Tolkien has put in, right? They're
Yeah.
facing, where Numenor was.
Hmm.
A silent prayer before they eat. A little, face towards Mecca as you pray.
Yeah.
Um, which is just really cool.
I
Um,
love that.
what was your vaguely silly thing you were going to bring up?
Oh, my silly thing was that after dinner, their tummies are too full to go to sleep. So they all hang out and chit chat for a while. And Faramir tells Sam and Frodo some of the history of Gondor and how it sowed the seeds for its own destruction because the people became complacent and their rulers were obsessing over eternal life instead of fucking, which is what they should have been doing.
Um,
Obviously, this is very serious history, but he's just, oh, so upset that they were just chasing eternal life instead of producing heirs, and they simply were not horny enough. And that is
you
really
know what
funny to
is an
me.
interesting form of immortality? Passing on your genes to the next generation,
Mhm.
creating a legacy. What is a
Ugh,
legacy? It's planting
God.
seeds in a garden you never get to see.
Is that a
um,
Hamilton?
it is a Hamilton thing.
Yeah.
I do want to go like briefly back. I want to
Yes, please.
mention the basic meal description we get.
Mhm,
Um, they have pale yellow wine, cool and fragrant, bread and butter, salted meats, dried fruits, and good red cheese, which all sounds fucking fantastic.
yeah, that sounds good to me. I'd eat that meal. Yellow
Um,
wine features prominently in a book that I'm reading right now, so extra points.
amazing. When Faramir tells the story of Gondor, he says, "We are a failing people, a springless autumn." Again, with this metaphor that Bilbo brought up in Fellowship, when winter comes without a spring, which I shall ever see.
Mhm.
Gondor is a fallen empire, built out of an earlier fallen empire, clinging to the last good of that old world. That's all I have. That's the last bit of poetry that I have managed to write there. Faramir tells how Rohan was founded, um,
Mhm.
and how the men of Gondor became basically normal humans,
Mhm.
and not, the supermen of Numenor.
And they have this, like, ranking of people, of, like, the high people and the middle people and the people of the darkness. I did not fully understand that.
It's your basic racism.
Yeah, sounds about right.
But more or less, it's because the men of Numenor have like little bits of elf blood in them.
Mhm.
They were like founded by half elves, and so you've got elf magic, immortal elf magic running through your blood. And then Sam sort of fucks up.
A little bit. Before he fucks up, he's talking about Galadriel and how you could dash yourself to pieces on her like a ship on a rock or drown yourself like a hobbit in a river, but neither rock nor river would be to blame. Sam supports women's asterisk wrongs. He supports Galadriel's wrongs. He supports elf wrongs. He's just
Amazing.
everyone. It's it's illegal to say anything negative about Galadriel. He's like, you could destroy yourself for her, and it wouldn't be her fault. She's perfect. She can do no wrong, and I love that.
Love that everyone thinks Galadriel is perfect because she is, and this is why Galadriel cannot have the ring.
Hmm.
Um, but he
Speaking
then
of the
like
ring,
speaking of the ring, Sam like fucks up at first by, saying like Boromir, right? Um, he stops midway through Boromir's name, and Faramir goes, you know, what would you say? He took his peril with him. Um, because earlier the line is, Faramir describes Galadriel as perilously fair. Sam says,
hmm
I don't know about perilous. It strikes me that folk takes their peril with them into Lorien and finds it there because they've brought it.
hmm
And so Faramir asks, did Boromir bring his peril in? And Sam says, yes, sir, begging your pardon, and a fine man as your brother was, if I may say so. But you've been warm on the scent all along. Now, I watched Boromir and listened to him, from Rivendell all down the road. Looking after my master, as you'll understand, and not meaning any harm to Boromir. But it's my opinion that in Lorien he first saw what I guessed sooner, what he wanted. And then he says something about the enemy's ring and then goes, oh, fuck.
Oopsie. And
Um,
then Faramir has a little joke, a little humorous moment, basically going, "Oh, and now I have you in my cave with all my soldiers. Hee hee hee. I could just take it." Nah, I'm kidding. I'm bound by my vow. I'm not going to take your fucking ring. But he does give him a little scare just for a second. And then Frodo
Um,
is so relieved he passes out.
what am I and all 300 of my handsome men gonna do to you?
Well, are you looking for suggestions?
Because Sam, in trying to get Faramir to forget that he like mentioned the ring, calls Faramir handsome and compliments
Oh.
him. Um,
Listen, these you could do with 300 men and make you forget a lot of things.
mm, yeah. But God, that sounds like
Probably
a lot
not
of
a lot of
chafing.
ventilation in
Anyway,
that cave, though.
no.
That'd be a stinky
Um,
cave. Then you could wash off in the waterfall, though.
yeah. Anyway, Faramir is like, as they bring up the ring, goes, if you took this thing upon yourself, unwilling at others asking, then you have pity and honor from me. And I marvel at you to keep it hid and not to use it. You are a new people and a new world to me. Are all your kin of like sort? And the answer to that is more or less yes. That's why Gandalf keeps going back to these motherfuckers.
Mhm.
You know, like as it says in The Hobbit, whisking young lads and lasses off on adventures. It's because they're like, inherently good or something and hardy and not going to give in easily to evil.
Would
This is
Lobelia
this is
Sackville Baggins take the ring?
Lobelia Sackville Baggins is the exception
I
that proves the
think
rule.
Lobelia Sackville Baggins would not be impressed enough by the ring because it doesn't have any gems or anything on it. She would want something flashy and less important.
Mm.
Anyway,
Anyway, as you said, yeah, Frodo fucking faints from exhaustion, and Faramir carries him to bed.
you can carry me to bed.
I'd faint from exhaustion after a long session with Faramir.
And it's 300 men.
Um, um,
That's too many. It's too
it's way too many. Too many. Um,
many.
listen, we'll just make it Faramir and Mablung and Damrod, and that's fine.
That works. Did you have anything else for
Anyway,
this chapter, Bestie?
no, and honestly, I don't have much for the next chapter.
Yeah, I my notes for this are very sparse. So, chapter 6, The Forbidden Pool.
Early in the morning before it gets light, which is, when my alarms go off these days, and it sucks. Early in the morning before it's light, Faramir wakes up Frodo and brings him to see Gollum fishing in the water.
Specifically, Frodo wakes up with Faramir bent over him, and Faramir goes, "There is nothing to fear. I would be afraid if someone was standing over me when I woke." Because he specifically, it says bent over him. So he's like arched over. He was in his face. And it's saying, "Don't be afraid. I would be afraid." That's a really stressful way to wake someone up.
Full on be not afraid type motherfucker shit.
Or like,
Um,
don't talk to short people like this. Talk to them like this. He was doing it the wrong way, buddy.
yeah. Early in the morning, Faramir wakes up Frodo in the worst possible way he could wake up Frodo. And, they go to see Gollum, and Faramir's like, we should kill him, right? And Sam wants to say yes, and then Frodo stops them instead.
Yeah, so Sam notices them leaving because Faramir doesn't summon Sam. He only wakes up Frodo. But Sam notices them leaving and sort of sneaks along behind. And they all watch Gollum fishing like he's a penguin in an aquarium. And they're just kind of observing him for a little bit. Um, yeah. And then
Yeah.
there's the conversation about like, hey, listen, I'm obligated to kill Gollum because he trespassed on our super secret pond.
Yeah, but eventually Frodo manages to convince them that like he can lead Gollum into a trap, essentially, and he'll be responsible for him, and they don't have to kill him.
Mhm.
So he goes to convince him to come up, but Gollum's like, "Bitch, you left me, so I'm gonna sit here and eat my fish,
Mhm.
and you can kiss my ass."
Mhm.
Cool. And Frodo goes, "I will curse you with the ring so you can never eat fish again. How's that sound?" Which, if Gollum was not so madly obsessed with the ring, I feel like it would not have worked.
Yeah.
But it's the word ring is, or like the word precious is, um like Gollum's sleeper agent activation word.
Mhm.
He does ask Frodo, where's the other one, the cross rude hobbit? Where is he? And that's an excellent description of Sam.
Yeah. And, eventually gets him away. The men tie him up. And at this point, I am sick of Gollum. And he is in the story, narratively, he's doing his job. He is a personification of ring corruption. He is annoying because the threat of corruption is ever present, and he's there to remind us what Frodo could become. And so in that it's exactly what he's supposed to be doing narratively. He's serving his purpose. And also he's really fucking annoying. And I am team Sam Gamgee. And like if he just disappeared forever, I'd be fine with that. I hope that he has some satisfying, like he'll come in at some pivotal moment and do something unexpectedly noble and then probably die and then be like, well, at least he died having finally found peace or whatever. Cause that seems like the kind of thing that's gonna happen. I don't know. But so for his sake, sure, I hope he gets that. For my sake, I don't need to see any more Gollum between now and the end of the book. I'm I'm over him.
I hate to tell you, bestie, we are gonna have some more Gollum between now and the end of the
Well,
book.
I know because he's sworn as Frodo's servant now, and so he's stuck there. But I will be
Yeah.
joining my fellow Sam in complaining about Gollum because he's not bringing anything new to the table. He's just a pain in the butt.
Um, we get some more Tolkien lore to talk about, Minas Ithil, or what used to be Minas Ithil and is now Minas Morgul,
Mhm.
which was at one point a city of Gondor at the beginning of the Third Age, and then was captured, and is now a fortress of Mordor that protects a path called Cirith Ungol.
Mhm.
Minas Morgul is the fortress of the Ringwraiths. And Faramir is like, this is a bad idea where he's leading you. Don't go to Cirith Ungol. And Frodo is like, what's Cirith Ungol? And Faramir goes, no one knows, just everyone gets scared of it. And we'll talk
Hmm.
about this more when we actually get there, because Cirith Ungol is Sindarin.
I was just about to ask. I was just about to say, it seems like we're reaching the end of our notes. This is a short chapter. Whatever happened to that Cinderin stuff? So, yes, please tell me about what the deal is with this name.
I can't translate it now. And the reason I won't translate it for you now is because it reveals exactly what the shapeless sphere that Faramir describes is.
Oh, dear. And I'm sure
Like,
all of our listeners who already know are just laughing at me. I genuinely do not know. My ignorance of all of this stuff, this is not a bit. This is not an exaggeration. I freely admit when I know things, I have no fucking clue what this is.
yeah, so Cirith Ungol like literally translates as you know, what we need to know about why this path is dangerous.
Okay.
Um so, Faramir being like, no one knows, buddy, you speak Sindarin. Frodo also speaks Sindarin, although this is not the first time that Frodo has needed to have something in Sindarin directly explained to him.
Mhm.
I've pointed this out a couple of times as we've gone through this series.
Yes.
But anyway, just we'll find out what the danger is soon enough. But finally, Frodo is like, listen, dude, I don't have a choice. If I don't go to Cirith Ungol, Minas Tirith is going to go the same way as Minas Ithil.
Mhm.
And Faramir tries like one more way to dissuade him, and goes like, Gandalf wouldn't have done this. And Frodo's like, Gandalf is dead, motherfucker.
Yeah.
And I have to keep going. So fuck. um and Faramir sees them off with basically, if you're going, just be careful. One of the last pieces of notes that I have noted here is the fact that Faramir keeps saying he read people, like he's reading it in them. So he's literally reading people's body language and facial expressions. He's got expertise and insight.
Which I'm sure will benefit him
Um,
in your dalliances if the
mm.
realities merge.
And he says that like he hopes that he ends up seeing Frodo again and he gets to hear more stories from him. And that's it. That's the whole fucking chapter.
Yeah, it ends on a really uncertain note because Frodo's basically like, all right, what do you suggest? And Faramir's like, I don't know, I just don't want you to die. And Frodo goes, well, that's not a very helpful suggestion. I'm going to continue doing my original plan. Thank you. And then, yeah, that's the end. There's a lot of trepidation as we go into whatever the next chapter brings.
Do we have anything else for these chapters and our various and sundry tangents on squirrels and voting rights and what makes a monarchy legitimate?
And art.
And
No, I don't think
art?
so. I think we covered all of it.
Art of monarchs?
If people have thoughts on any of those topics or other topics, where can they find us, Bestie?
You can find us on our social media, which is at FanAppPod, FANAPPPOD, on Instagram, the artist formerly known as Twitter, aka X,
Do you
Tumblr.
tweet? Because I don't follow us on Twitter.
I have not tweeted or exceeded, whatever the fuck.
Maybe one day we will. Follow us and find out.
Muskrat. Yeah, Elon Muskrat wants to call it anyway. Muskrats are not part of the squirrel family.
Oh, I was going to ask if they're related to marmots.
No. But squirrels are, according to the Church of Scientology, heretics.
Fascinating. We don't have time for that. What other places can people contact us? What's our email?
You can contact us at thefandomapprentice@gmail.com. And, on any of our social media, you can subscribe to our podcast. That's sort of a one-way street. You just get to hear our voices. So, if you want to talk about squirrels or politics or Tolkien or what Faramir is doing as he looks out the window to the west, you can contact us in the places that I said you can contact us. If you like what you're hearing, leave us a 5-star review. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or another platform that allows you to leave us a written review, leave us a written review. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't like. We may or may not take constructive criticism.
If you are a YouTube listener and you're not in Russia, you could leave a comment.
Yes. Well, even if you are in Russia, you can leave a comment on everything but that one episode.
Yeah.
We don't speak Russian, so, please be nice if you're leaving comments in Russian. If you're leaving comments in any other language, also please be nice. It's the internet. People aren't nice very frequently, and it would be lovely to bring a little more niceness to the internet. That's what we try to do. A little more niceness, a little more horniness, a little more gayness.
That's beautiful. And I think that is a perfect sentiment to wrap this podcast. And we will see you all in 2 weeks.
Remember to wrap other things if you're engaging with 300 men. Good night.
Bye.
The Phantom Apprentice is produced and edited by Ryn Sam. Our music was composed and performed by James, and our art is by Casey Turgeon. This podcast is created for non-commercial entertainment purposes, and the opinions expressed therein are our own and are not reflective of the opinions of any other person or organization. The content discussed is the property of the Tolkien estate and is used here under fair use.